writings from the margin, right? You have enrolled yourself in the course that is PG Diploma in Writings from the Margin, and my course particularly is talking about the same thing, that is Writings from the Margin. But before I start, I would like to know about your view. Anything you want to say about the Dalits, because your first unit that I'm going to start, it was talking about the history, culture, and identity of the Dalits. So you can write any word or say any word if you want to state when we were talking about the Dalit identity. Have you read about it, and how much course you have read, completed, or any novel you are familiar with? If you want to share your idea, you can share, Shushmita.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Shushmita. I am unable to hear you, Shushmita. If it is possible, you can write 2 3 words in the chat box. I may look upon it and we'll start the construction of your questions and anything like that.
Ma'am, can you just give me just 2 minutes so that I can connect to the I want to connect it to the laptop. Right now I'm on my connecting to the mobile.
Okay,
If you can
okay,
just
no
give me
problem.
2 minutes.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you, ma'am.
We are waiting. Me and Sir is waiting.
Okay, ma'am. Just 2 minutes. Hello.
Hello, yes, Shushmita, you are very much audible.
Ma'am, I've never read about the literature, and for joining this PG diploma, this was my interest to know more about. Because in PG in masters, we normally read about British literature, American literature, post-colonial literature, and criticism and theory. But in many colleges and universities, also there is no mention of Dalit literature or tribal literature, folk literature. So because of that, because I wanted to know more about it. Actually, I don't know anything about it. I've never read a work on it. So that's why I joined this course.
Okay, that is perfectly fine with me. I have no problem. So basically, we'll start from the scratch, right? Today we are going to talk about the writings from the margins, right? And but before dwelling into the Dalit identity, the question of Dalit identity, their power and position in the mainstream society, especially the mainstream Hindu society, when we are talking about the Dalits in the India, right? But before starting that, let's comprehend what your course actually promises you to read and what kind of orientations and constructions you will be looking for in this course. So basically, my course itself, as I told you, MEG13, which we are going to start today, is basically dealing with your course itself, right? We are talking about the writings from the margins, right? So margins are basically, as you have already talked about the post-colonial literature, you have also mentioned that you have read Britishers, Americans. So the British canon, British canonical writers were the one who are said to be the mainstream canonical writers, the mainstream canon of the literature, right? They hold the pedestal of those writers, right? So after that, the American literature crop up, but on the other hand, the post-colonial literature talks about those countries, talks about those voices which are actually be at the brunt of the colonization. They were silent, they were muted, they were oppressed, they were bonded, right? They suffered from the slavery. So this is the reason you talk about that concerns, right? So you can see that even the post-colonial Dalit literature is also a kind of a branch, a small arena of the whole of the web of post-colonial literatures, because in post-colonial literatures we were talking about the world literature, and even we were talking about the Indian literature, right? Indian literature that spun after the independence. So this is what we are going to talk about. What are the margins, right? Let's first comprehend the terminology of the margins, right? As the word says, margins are something which are on the edges, right? Which are on the edges. So marginalized voices, your The course has taken the name from the marginalized voices. Marginalized voices are the voices, those who are on the peripheries. They do not belong to the mainstream. They do not belong to the whole arena of the society. On the other hand, they were pushed to the edges. They were pushed to the peripheries where they don't have any authority. They don't have any voice. And because they don't have any authority and because they don't have any voice, so this was the reason they do not even consider to have an identity as well, right? So they really need to work hard to push themselves and work hard themselves to belong in the mainstream, right? So this is a very basic construction between the mainstream and the margins, right? So in margins, basically, we were talking about the oppressed individuals, the marginalized voices, basically were the Dalits, right? The lower caste individuals, men and women both. And then we were also, even the margins we were talking about, it is a broad term, even we were talking about the women itself, right? Because women are also a kind of a marginalized voices in the Hindu system, right? In the Hindu society. Because when you read about Hinduism, when you read about the Indian society, we know it very well that how women are also treated to be the second class citizens in the patriarchal order, right? Or the patriarchal order, it pose that man is the ultimate breadwinner and he is going to be the ultimate ruler of the society. So this is the reason, after Dalits, men and women, we are also including margins, the women as well. Then we third participant can be the children as well, because when we are talking about individuals, so children are after our third aspect, right, where they are also, you could say, exploited, subjected to concerns of slavery or servitude, because we are living in a kind of a families where we impose our wills on the children, in which we are imposed our wills on the kids. So even we are talking about the kids, then we are talking about the nature itself, because like women, like Dalits, like children, men order the Hindu society, or you could say about the mainstream society, is actually exploiting these individuals. And same, they haven't even left the natural resources, right? When we are talking about the water resources, when we are talking about the forest resources, right? You read the nature writing, eco criticism, ecofeminisms, you feel that the same connotations, that the how the Dalits are exploited, the same way they are exploiting the forest, and the same way they are exploiting the nature. So this was also the reason we will uh, discuss in our another lectures about the tribal literature, right? When we were talking about the tribal literatures, that how they are the ultimate forest dwellers, they are the inhabitants of the forest, and this was the reason we were talking about them and their connection. Because the same way, even the mainstream society, the people, the individuals are in the mainstream society, they even exploited the natural resources. And the last, even in the margins or even in the subaltern studies, we are also talking about the wildlife, right? Wildlife, the animals, that how they are even exploited by the individuals, right? Exploited by the mainstream individuals. So this is the reason, because of their exploitation, they are marginalized, they are subjected to slavery and servitude, they are pushed to the peripheries, and they are just pushed to the peripheries just for the servitude of the mainstream society, right? They are just asked to be served. This is the only purpose they have in their life. This is what mainstream society makes them to believe, right? I hope you are getting my point, Shushmita. Any question? If you have any questions, you can ask me anytime, right? So I hope margins are clear,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So we were talking about the margins, right? So in margins, we'll talk about the Dalits, we'll talk about the women, we'll talk about the nature, we'll talk about even the wildlife as well, because these are the constructions, whether it is going to be the Dalits, whether it is going to be the women, they are the peripheries individuals, they are the marginalized voices, which for centuries have been exploited on the name of mainstream society, right? So but particularly in this course, you will be talking about the Dalits, right? Men and women, and all about the Dalit identity and position, right? And after margins, let's start with the Dalits, right? I have already told you that Dalits are a kind of a margins, because they don't belong to the mainstream society, right? Why they don't belong to the mainstream society? Because our society is basically based on the Hindu law society, right? We still believe in the caste system. So the construction of the Hindu society, the construction of the Indian society largely depends upon the caste system, right? Because we don't have races here like we have in the American, right? So there, even you can have the Dalit literature connotation with the American African writers as well, right? The Negroes there, the blacks there, right? So you can see the same way that how blacks were exploited at the hands of the whites, the same way the lower caste people will be exploited and have been exploited by from centuries by the upper caste individuals, right? Because our India is led by the caste system, right? The whole construction of the Hindu society is based on the caste system, right? The caste system, and the holy law is proposed by the Manu, right? It is actually proposed in the Manu Smriti, which divides the caste in the four varnas, right? So earlier, when we talk about the Hindu society, which was basically, I hope you have read Marxism,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So in Marxism we will be talking about the economic inequalities, right? That how, because of the economic equalities, the society was actually divided into the two parts. So same way here as well, right? Because of the varna system was based on the economic inequalities, and you know it very well that how it is about the money, right? Money, power and authority, and the power and authority sprungs from money as well. And anybody who has the power, he is deemed to make money, he is deemed to assert authority, right? So the caste society was based on the varna society. There were four varnas. First were the Brahmin, second were the Kshatriya, third were the Vaishya, and fourth were the Shudras, right? So the first, there is a hierarchical order. The first were the Brahmins. They were the priestly caste. They were having the teaching profession, right? Those who are the teaching, they are teaching the Vedas, they are teaching the Granths, holy Granths, and they are proposing the uh, audience to what to follow and what not to follow. So ultimately the teaching and the sermonizing thing, and because they were dealing with the priestly duties of Vedas, this was the reason they were highly paid, right? They were highly paid, they were quietly revered in the society, they were respected by the masses, and this was the reason it is very common and they are deemed to earn more and more, right? And the second were the Kshatriya class. They were the protectors, they were the warriors, they are the warrior aristocracy, warrior classes, those who go to the wars and they fought for us, right? And because there was the power, there was the courage, the power, the valor associated with it, this was the reason they will be more and more, they will also be respected, but not to the state of priest, right? So they will definitely be cherished and loved by the people because of their force and power, right? So this was the reason they will put on the second register, as they are said to be the protector of the society. And third were the Vaishya, right? We were talking about the Vaishya. So the Vaishya were the people who are basically involved in the agriculture, trade, and commerce, right? So they are definitely the people who are the business class of, right? Business class, right? So they were having uh, interest, credit, managing these kind of a thing, the financial system of the society, right? So we have talked about the uh, priestly duties, then we talked about the war, and then we talk about the society's construction, which is based on the wealth, which is based on the money. So that was going to be handled by the Vaishya, right? And the third thing, and the fourth sect is definitely the Shudras, right? So Shudras are the people who are actually dependent on other people, right, in order to extract the money. For example, a fisherman, right, he kills the fish and this is how they will have it back, right? On the other hand, so such kind of a societies, there was a very bleak term, right, between Dalits and Shudras. Dalits came very, very later after the independence of the India, and that is after the a lot of effects of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar himself. Yes, yes, Shushmita.
Ma'am, is there a difference between the Dalits and the Shudras?
Yes, definitely. We were going to talk about it because the fourth term we are talking about the sect of Shudra, right? In it was actually in the Vern system, and the Shudras were basically, if you talk about the India centuries back, the India which is developed from the tribals, and from the tribals they were actually the traditional artisans, right? They were dancers, performers, singers. So Shudras were that, right? Dancers, performers, singers, porters, sculptors. So they are traditionally the artisans, and on the other hand, another one going to be the laborers, right? Those who work in the labor, in like in the agriculture area, right? So these were the Shudras. And then comes the fifth layer, which are the untouchables, right? Which we are going to talk about, the Dalits. So this was the reason Dalits were not even part of the caste system. They are the oppressed of the oppressed, right? The marginalized of the marginalized, right? So Dalits were the people, or you could say the Shudras. In that term, if we go centuries back, the term exactly used for them was Ati Shudra, right? Ati Shudra, that they do not belong to even the caste or one system. This was the reason people believe that they don't have even any caste, they don't have even any identity, because as I told you, they depend upon others to earn a living. For example, fishermen, for example, there was a Dome community, you must have seen in the movie Masan, right? The dome community, they cremate the other's body, right? jalate hain wo dusron ki bodies ko. So it is said to be something which is impure, right? So they do such kind of impure activities. For example, manual scavenging, for example, the working in the gutters, the working, doing the cleaning of the litters. And they are dealing with such kind of impure activities. This is the reason there was a fifth class, that is the Atishudra, right? That is what we are talking about, the Dalits, right? The oppressed classes, right? Even in the British term, they were said to be the depressed classes, right? So they were even not even a part of a caste structure. They were much and much lesser than that, right? Even Shudras have some kind of a connection in the society, but these individuals, they were so much oppressed, they were so much marginalized, that they do not even belong to the society. So this was the reason I was talking about the margins, right? So these are the people who are just pushed to the peripheries. Yes, Shushmita, you want to say?
Ma'am, you're talking about Ati Shudras. It was not included in the Varna system by Manu, no?
Yes, right.
So who actually gave this Ati Shudra terms? The upper caste.
I know Ati Shudra was actually mentioned by Manu Samriti, because it is not only, but it doesn't form under the caste system, right? He doesn't include it to be under the four Varnas, right?
Okay, so
He gave,
it is in Manu Smriti.
yes, yes, he gave the term in the Manu Samriti, Ati Shudras, and not even the Ati Shudras. They were even, they were even, you could say, slurred by a lot of names, right? Instead of Ati Shudras, they were even, in a layman's language, they were untouchable, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Because nobody is allowed to touch them, nobody is allowed to see them. They don't want to. Allowed to in means because they don't want to, right? They feel that they are so impure, right? And if we see them, if we touch them, even their shadows are not to be seen, right? So they feel that the four varnas, or especially the upper caste people, right? If we were talking about the three people in upper caste, Brahmins, Kshatriya, and Vaishya, they feel that if we see their shadows, if we touch them, so we are going to be deemed forever, right? So because they are dealing in such kind of impure activities, because of the varna system, because they were doing these kind of activities, they are doing these kind of works, right? So this was the reason the metaphor of purity and pollution comes from, right? So the people, the individuals, the society, the caste, who is actually doing the pure work, for example, like the priestly duties, like the protectors, like dealing with the agriculture and trade, they are said to be the pure castes, they are said to be the upper caste, they are said to be the respected and revered people in the country, in the society. But on the other hand, these people, as I told you, because they were dancers, they were performers, they were even doing this work of manual scavenging, they are said to be the polluting part of the society, they are said to be the pollution of the society, right? So this was the reason. Even not even ati untouchable, they are unseeable, right? People don't want to see them, right? They are unapproachable, people don't even want to approach them, even their shadows are unseeable, right? They don't want to even see the shadows. There were a very strict rule in the Manu Samriti, that was actually implemented by the Hindu system, Hindu law, Hindu society, which says that even if somebody sees the shadow of the of a Dalit, of a Shudra, he is going to deem to, to the hell. This was the reason they were beaten badly, they were pushed to the peripheries. Their huts, their houses in the sense of their broken huts, were usually outside the society, right? Outside the village, they have a separate section where they can move out, and they don't have the access to the mainstream society, they don't have the access to the village society. They have different wells, they have different farms, they have different things, they have their different own crematorium as well, right? So even the dead bodies of different caste are also casteist, right? So in this way, they are unseeable, untouchable, unapproachable, and there are very a lot of, you could say, they're very degraded names. For example, the Panchama, right? So they are this because of this thing, because you asked about who has given the term, they were referred to be the Panchama, because we just have four caste, and Panch means fifth, so they are said to be the fifth layer. They are not even termed to be a caste, right? They are said to be the fifth layer, who belong to the lowest of the lowest. That this was the reason they are said to be the Panchama. And then somebody who told you could say, who even uh, said to be the Chandals as well, right? Unhe Chandal kaha jata tha. They were Chudels, there were Asuras, there were Rakshas as well, right? If you read the holy scriptures, they were even portrayed to be the Rakshas, and they are even portrayed to be the Asuras as well, right? So when we're talking about the tribal literature, we were definitely talking about the terms of how they are criminalized and how they are polluted in such a way that they are even termed to be the asuras and rakshas as well, right? So this was the reason that they are tend to be the panchama, the punch, right? He belongs to the fifth layer. They don't even belong to the mainstream society, mainstream four varnas. And because of the construction of this varna, right, because people are getting money on the basis of the work they are doing, so it is very common that somebody who has a highest profession like the teaching, like the administration, like in our mainstream society as well, right, the teachers, professors, administrators, leaders, they're going to get more money rather than people who are doing the cleaning work, right? So same goes, these varna system got so ingrained in the society, and it ultimately turns into the caste system, right? As Manu Samriti testifies the system, that once a Brahmin will always a Brahmin, and once a Shudra is always a Shudra, and on the other hand, once a Brahmin or a Shudra will be born by the caste, right? So it is not about you acquire by your karmas, and you acquire by your karmas in your last birth, right? So it has nothing to do with the present construction. You can't help any identity. It's all depends upon, if you are born as a Brahmin, you will be respected as a Brahmin, and right, and there is no way to change the mobility of the system, right? And for example, if you born as a Shudra, you will be treated as a Shudra, and there is no way that you can rise up to the standard of a Brahmin, Vaishya, or you could say, or a Kshatriya, right? So this was a reason, the two things, that your identity is born with you, and you cannot change your identity in this janma, right? And they believe that the kind of a birth and death is intermingled, and once you are born as a Brahmin, if you do the good karmas and you do the priestly duties, in next birth you will also be a, you could say, a Brahmin. But on the other hand, people feel that they are born to be Shudra because of their past misdeeds, you would say, right? So this is the reason this Varna system transformed into the caste system, because of the economic inequalities, right? Economic inequalities and the lack of education as well, because Brahmins are the ultimate people who were educated, right? They have the Veda, they have the Puranas, right? They have the knowledge of mantras by which they learn about the things, they learn about the system, they learn about universe, they learn about the society. But on the other hand, there are classes and caste who don't have any access to the knowledge, and this was the reason, to even to the education, and even their, and even whatever they are earning very less because of their profession. So this was the reason they were pushed to the peripheries, right? So they were the Ati Shudras, they were the marginalized individuals, right? When we talk about the four varna system, they do not even qualify to be the four varna system, right? And they will never be in this first birth, right? According to the Manu, first thing he said about the birth, and second thing even he said about the marriage as well, right? You know it very well, in the past, you could say, past centuries, the marriage between the, even today, the intercaste marriages are very much discouraged by our society, right? So the same goes with, because of this, the past traditions, right? Because Manu believes that a Brahmin will only marry a Brahmin, a Kshatriya will only marry a Kshatriya, a Vaishya will only marry a Vaishya, and a Shudra will only marry a Shudra, right? So this is how the caste system will go on and on. So there is no way to get up or get down, right? So as I told you, a Brahmin will always remain a Brahmin, Kshatriya will always remain a Kshatriya. You cannot interchange it, right? So this is how the Varna system got transformed into the caste system, right? I hope this much is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, then we are talking about the Chandals, right? So they were actually such kind of a derogatory terms which are actually associated with the Chandals and untouchables, right? They were termed to be the Ati Shudras, and this is the reason that they, when we are talking about the marginalized voices, when we are talking about their identity, they were not even the subject, right? They were basically the objects, right? So in the Hindu law society, in the Hindu society, the mainstream society, they are not to be the subject, they were just the objects, right? So let me quote 2 3 examples. You will get to know that how much worse condition they have in the past centuries, right? And the very basic things, you must have heard that they are not allowed to, have water from the upper caste wells, right? They are not even allowed to enter the houses or even look at the upper caste, right? So very 3 heinous examples I would like to cast, that if a Brahmin, it is written in the Manusamriti that if a Shudra happens to hear a shloka or a mantra, that the hot oil will put in his or her ears. So there are the practices, right? If a Shudra comes to the temple and he hears the mantra and he hears the shloka, the hot oil has put to his ears, right? So such kind of practices were actually there in the India. And another example, you must be heard of the breast tax, the people, the women who belongs to the lower caste, they were not allowed to cover their breast. And if they cover their breast, they have to pay the breast tax, right? So there was an incident that once a woman was covering his breast, and she was covering her breast, and there came a upper caste man, and he demands for the tax. And that woman, so instead of paying the tax, she cut her breast. She cut her breast and throws the breast on her,
Ma'am, is it a
right? So
real
such kind of
story?
heinous. Yes, yes, it is a real story. I'll give you the link. I'll give you the mention. It is a story somewhere in the South India. I forgot the name, but the lady is definitely cherished to be one of the the visionaries and one of the empowering figures in the Dalit women, right? So this is the real story. The text you can even check on the Google, right? It was by Travancore, the kings of Travancore. He imposed that text, right? And the lower caste women are not even allowed to cover their upper body, right? That time it was also known as head text, right? Head text, they are not even allowed to, because they believe that the whole body of the women, especially the Dalit women, they are not to be respected. They don't have any identity, and they are all already always display for the upper caste men, right? They believe that it should be displayed for the upper caste men because they don't have any authority or they don't have any respect, so it should be available for it, right? So such kind of a heinous atrocities, you could say that he such as are bleak past, right? One more example I would like to quote, that we are talking about the women, we are talking about the temple, even about the identity, right? So Ati Shudras, it is said to be that they will not have any kind of a possession. They don't collect things, right? When we talk about the Jews and we talk about the Christians, the conflict between Jews and Christians, the same way you will feel that they are not even liable to have any kind of a property. They are not even liable to have any kind of a possession, right? So it is written in the Manusmriti that the Shudra will only just have a broken plate, right? He will broken plate and he will live over the leftovers of the upper caste people, right? Ki jo bhi upper caste people, whatever they give him or her, right? While begging, he will just survive over that if he wants to. And other than a broken plate, he just going to have a donkey. Even on the name of a pet, he cannot have a cat, he cannot have a dog, he can simply carry a donkey, right? Only a donkey can be carried by a Shudra, which will definitely going to be a symbol of their petty existence, right? So such as a kind of a atrocity, the very common practices in the ancient India when we talk about the caste-ridden society in the past few years, right? And the one more example is that because of this, they don't have any identity, they don't have any position, they don't have a possession. They are allowed to have a pot around their neck, right? An earthen pot, एक मिट्टी का घड़ा, they used to tie around their neck like a necklace, and they used to have a broom at the back. जैसे अपनी पूंछ बनाते हैं like a tail, they used to tie a broom. उनको एक झाड़ू बांधना है अपनी कमर पे, right, around the broom, and they used to have a necklace on the pot, right? What is your consideration if I ask you to visualize a person who is actually having a necklace of earthen pot and a broom at the back like a tail? How do you visualize and what do you say about that person,
Ma'am, is it's devastating even thinking of it.
right?
I've heard it for the first time.
Okay,
Ma'am,
so
are these rules were in post-colonial India?
no, no, no. It was it was in India. You could say it was for 1500, 1400. You will talk about the Mauryan society. We will talk about the Gupta period, right? So Guptas were the
Okay.
society, right? So there, because it was the Britishers, right? Britishers even in the Indian Penal Code in 1871, they criminalized this because of the criminal caste, right? But we were talking about a person, right? We are visualizing a person, a man who is actually having an earthen pot on the neck as a necklace and had a broom around the back like a tail, right? And I asked you to visualize it, and when we visualize it, people, first thing
It's
that comes to our mind is a ludicrous, right?
Yes,
A
ma'am.
person, a person who is deemed to be ridicule, right? Anybody who sees it, he just mocks at the person, right? So you could see that this was the actual identity they wanted to impose. They wanted to impose on the mainstream society that these are the people who are contemptible, they are despised, you have to mock at them, you have to make ridicule of it, right? And the reasons behind it are even more bleaker, right? So when we talk about the earthen pot around the neck, because when we speak, our the intensity of our voices, the waves of our voices, it reaches in the air, right? But they tie the pot with with the purpose that when his or her voice will come in the contact with the nature, because of the earthen pot, right? It mingles with the air and it will not reach so far. I hope you got the idea.
No, ma'am, can you please explain it again?
For example, I am telling you that if when we speak and when we speak louder, our voice, the waves of our voice are going to go higher and higher and will reach a lot of people, right? You understand
Yes.
that it is
Yes,
because
yes,
of the wave, right? It is because of
yes.
the wave, the intensity, the tempo, right? The voice will reach far and will reach higher, right? But if you uh, tied a earthen pot around that person, so that person, first thing, because of the tired thing, he is not able to speak properly. And if he speaks, because this the voice will get mingled in the earthen pot, it will not reach far and far places. They feel that
Okay,
because of this reason, the air will not be polluted by his or her voice.
okay.
I hope you got it now.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Right? So this was the
Yes,
reason the earthen pot was tied around the neck, right? And then we talk about that his voice cannot be heard because they believe to be that his voice is polluting. His or her voice is polluting the, you could say, the society. And the second thing, they are actually tying a broom around the back. The reason being is the broom around the back is because whenever he goes, wherever he goes, he's polluting the space. Because I told you already the metaphor of purity and pollution, they are dealing with such kind of activities. This was the reason they are said to be the impure, and they are said to be the people who are polluting the society, who are actually responsible for the pollution in the society, right? And this is the reason they have to tie a broom around the neck, because wherever you go, they are polluting the sphere, they are polluting that space. And because of the broom, wherever they go, the space will be cleaned automatically. If a shudra walks in that street, and how can an upper caste people walk that street? They will be polluted, they will also be termed to be impure because of just of the walking of that shudra, because of the footprints. If the mingle the if their footprints mingle with the shudra, right? So this was the reason they have to tie the broom, and it automatically the floor will be cleaned. And the upper caste people, the upper caste men, they are then walk freely, they can enjoy the pious and pure space, right? So this was the reason that they are imposed. These are the dress code, or you could say these are the customs and traditions imposed on the people, right? Imposed on the different caste and communities, right? I hope you come across the idea, right? I
yes,
hope
ma'am.
you, right? So you get it, such as the sorry state of affairs of our Hindu caste-ridden society, which started from the Varna system, and this is how they transformed into a whole casteist society, where the Ati Shudras, right, on the name of pollution, on the name of impurities, they were not even a part of mainstream culture. They don't have access on any festivals, they don't have any access to any traditional things, and on the other hand, they are not even liable to come in the contact with the mainstream society, basically the you could say upper caste Hindus, right? And then one more example, that there was a certain caste for whom the upper caste people, they believe that uh, they are very impure, and even their shadows are avoidable, right? So they really want to even avoid the shadows, right? They said that you are so low, you belong to the lowest, we don't even want to see your shadows. So what they do is, those people, they are not allowed to roam in the morning and in the evening, right? So from morning to evening, they are not even allowed to roam around the city, roam in the open sun, right? This was the reason, because they say that if any upper caste man, if any individual, even mainstream individual, he happens to see the person, or the shadow will be fallen on the upper caste man, he or she will become impure, right? So this was the reason their whole activity was shunned by the society, their whole activity was shunned by the society, and they are liable to be in their places, right, from day to evening, in the whole sunlight, whenever a person comes and goes, you have to be in your homes, you have to be in your huts. So this was the reason, because they were actually staying in the, you could say they are staying from day to evening at their homes. They cannot earn bread, right? So the only thing, they are starved to death. On the other hand, they have no other reason just to, ask for the begging. They beg from some things, or sometimes they eat the garbage, they eat the waste material, whatever is thrown outside the village. And but on the other hand, you have to earn something. So this was the reason that such caste has become the thieves, right? Because they were not allowed to move in the city, they were not allowed to come out of their spaces in the daylight. So the only area which is limited to them, right, the only workplace that is limited to them is the night time, right? They can just pursue anything in the night, because in the night they are allowed to move out, right, to move out from their homes. So this was the reason they become thieves, they become robbers, right? Because they don't have anything else to do on the name of earning a livelihood. So this was the reason they utilize night, and they become the thieves, they become the robbers, just to earn a living, right? So this was how the Indian Penal Code, when we talk about the Britishers, they said that these are the thieves, these tribes, or these Dalits, or these depressed classes are criminals, right? Because they don't have any other choice. You could even think about a person who is not allowed to move out, and what is left in the night time, right? Especially in centuries back, when we don't have clubs, bar, restaurants where he can easily pursue a good career, right? But on the other hand, he's just left to be the thieves and robbery, right? So this is how such class, the particular caste, has become the thieves and robbers, because society actually forced them to be, right? So such are the some heinous example. The atrocities are, these atrocities committed by on the lives of the Dalits, right? I hope this much is clear.
Yes, ma'am. That means Britishers help to improve the conditions of the Atishudras.
Yes, Britishers, because you could say, when we talk about the colonial India, they want to rule over everyone, right? They don't know the caste distinctions. But on the other hand, there are certain things that actually worked for India, in sense of, because the whole of the India, he fought against Britishers, right? So there came a sense of unity. Even when you read about Gandhian movement, right? When you read about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, right? They definitely paved the way for the unity of the society, right? They encourage the masses, they make them aware, the masses, right, to rise against such kind of a distinctions, right? Even Rabindranath Tagore, Where the Mind is Without Fear, he's talking about the narrow domestic walls, right? Have you read the poem? And you will come across the phrase that he's talking about the narrow domestic walls, right? The narrow domestic walls of caste, creed, gender. He wants people to come out of it, right, in order to build a democratic country, in order to build an independent country, where we have freedom, justice, and we will going to have the equality, right? So this is how, definitely, there are some movements who actually paved the way for the unity of the India. But on the other hand, Britishers, when you talk about the Britishers, they want to rule all over the India. So they widened some distinctions, right? For example, they widened the art distinctions. For example, Hindu and Muslim, right? They created the rift and widened the rift, right? Because they know that there are certain religious differences which are quite common, right, in the common day practices. So this is the reason they exploited such kind of a differences. But on the other hand, yes, there are some things that they have done good. But on the other hand, when we talking about the Ati Shudra, right, the contribution of Dalits, you could say, particularly the Dalits, the from the point of view of colonial period, right, they even criminalized them, right? Because they don't have such kind of inkling to the our ancient past. They never understand, and they never pay attention to understand that why these classes are thieves, right? They are tend to become thieves because they are not allowed to move out in the daylight, right? So they simply listed few things, and they said that these are the criminal tribes, right? And whenever there will be any charge, whenever there will be any criminal activity, they just caught some kind of a people and put them in the jail, right? So I will not support the colonial rule in any way, because more or less it was actually the rooting of the same atrocities that you feel, that whatever we see that lower caste upper caste people did to lower caste people, you could say the white masters, they have did the same thing with all over the India, right, without any distinction. Yes, so you could say that their discrimination was not at all there, right? They tortured us, humiliated us in the same way they torture a upper caste man or a lower caste man, right? I hope this much is clear,
Yes, ma'am.
right? And when we were talking about the few things, right? The few atrocities I have given you the example, so you could say that how bad condition they were living in that kind of a society, right? Even there are certain laws that were written in the Manusmriti. Even Manusmriti is also a form of some kind of a, a different kind of a shastra. It is not the ultimate be all and end all truth, right? There are other shastra, for example, there are other sutras as well, right? So Manusmriti is also one of the sutras. There are, for example, there is a Kama Sutra, there is Arth Shastra. So same way, it is also a form of a society, right? It is also a form of a shastra to build a society, right? But because of the economic inkling to it, right, people enjoy the power, right? If a Brahmin born as a Brahmin, right, and he will I mean, for the whole life he will become a Brahmin, right? He will enjoy the power, he will enjoy the wealth, he will enjoy the reverence and respect of the people, right? Why did he want to change it? He did not want to change it, right? And who wants to change it, right? He wants to enjoy. So this is the reason that caste system is very much there in the, even in the contemporary fabric, because we enjoy the privileges, right? Though we do not accept in the public, but we enjoy those privileges, right? We like to be termed as Brahmin, we like to be termed as Kshatriya, we like to term ourselves as Vaishya, right? But on the other hand, you could say even the the term which is used and which is actually written in our constitution, Indian constitution, right, which is said to be the ultimate Bible, or you could say ultimate Gita of our nation, the Indian constitution, right? Even the particular term that was given by B.R. Ambedkar, in a constituted assembly, that what kind of a name, what kind of a term we should give the people, those who are depressed, those who are marginalized from centuries, what kind of a social justice we can we can then to done to them, so that the term decided was SC, that is scheduled castes, right? So they termed them as scheduled castes. So few castes are scheduled, or few castes are scheduled in the list of the constitution, that they are liable to have few of the rights, so that for the upliftment of them and for their reconstruction and for their representation in the society. But you could see that we are moving in such kind of a contemporary society. Even SC is a caste slur, right? As I told you, uh, we enjoy the surnames, we enjoy our caste with a very respect and reverence. We enjoy such kind of a privileges, that this is my name, this is my caste. But on the other hand, a constitutional term, right, a constitutional term in India has become a caste slur, right? Right, if we have to accuse somebody, if we have to question his merit, we used to say this term, that he is an SC and she is an SC, right? I hope I'm right, right? I'm not deceiving any facts
Yes.
from you, right? So
No.
such is the case, right? And when we're talking about the contemporary world, as I told you, if you look at it, a constitutional term has, we have made the mockery of the constitutional term, because we don't want to get rid of our privileges, right? But we are actually having from the centuries, and we really want to have it on our kids, we really don't want to change it. And on the other hand, the constitutional term has become a caste slur, right? And not only this, right, the very common common things you have come across, that I have seen even in a lot of the current scenarios, that whenever we have to question the credibility of that person, we used to say that he belongs to such kind of a caste, this is the reason, right, he's behaving like that, right? We have to question the credibility of the people or integrity of the people, right? And there are certain proves that when a political leader, right, our political leader, he admitted to the AIMS, the biggest biggest medical center in the India, right? The AIMS, who provides the professional, right, the world's best doctors, right? Whenever he gets admitted in a hospital, he first asks for the caste of the doctor, right? If that person is from general category, or if that person is from other category, because a general category, because I want to get treated with the general category, because that promises the correct treatment of mine. They question their credibility. So you could see that this is the contemporary India I'm talking about, right? So this is when we and we have just made a contrast from contemporary India to the, sorry, to the past ancient India to the contemporary India. So you yourself can see that the things haven't changed much, right? We are still sailing in the same boat, we are still on the same plane, we haven't evolved much, right? As I told you, that we even make the mockery of a constitutional term. So we haven't moved in a right, we are not moving in the right direction. On the other hand, I feel that we are on the same position, and even we, and if the things will be like that, we will be back to our, we will be back to the ancient past, where we will be regressing, right? So such is the kind of the current scenarios, right? Even few days back, to make you understand about the Dalits, right, about the Ati Shudras. So there was a very famous a lingo nowadays, millennials, or you could say very famous thing that you could, very famous term you come across from the Instagram or from the social media, from the, these public accounts, that is chapri, right? Have you heard the term chapri?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So chapri is also a caste slur, right? It is also a derogatory term which used to demean the kya kehte hain, lower caste people, right? Because chapri has come from the word chapar, right? Chapar were also a caste, right? Also a lower caste, right? They were also the ati shudra. Chapar is a kind of a hut, right? Basically the roof of the hut, right? So they are, because they were living in the huts, they are not living in the full-fledged houses made of the brick and made of permanent things. So they used to have a mud houses, right? Mud houses, mud huts. And because their because their roof was not slanted, their roof was not properly built, their roof was just of the a mixture of amalgam of a water or a mud, it is said to be the chapper, right? Chapper hota tha unke. They don't have the huts, they have the chappers, right? So from the chappers, so this was the reason. From the chapri comes from the chapper, right? And you could say that we do not call chapri to someone who is elite, who is posing aesthetic pictures, who is posing aesthetic life experiences. We call chapri to the people who do not belong to the elite class, right? These are basically the very common laymen of our country, the people who are below the poverty line, who just want to create content and have money, right? So this is the reason their people will be definitely, their unesthetic activities, right? They're ridiculing and mockering, as I told you about a person with a earthen pot and a broom, right? So you could say that such kind of a constructions are still there, right? And such kind of a derogatory terms, what we use them as chandals, panchamas, and there, and we are you doing the same things, right? The chapri is also a casteist term which we used to donate to the people who doesn't belong to the elite class, who doesn't belong to the aesthetic experiences, and who doesn't give you the aesthetic vibes, you could say, right? So chapri is also a very famous term which is also at the same time casteist in the sense, right? So you could see that we haven't moved much, right? So we were talking about the Ati Shudras, and from Ati Shudras, so there were a lot of contentions, right? Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is definitely the father, right, of the constitution. It's also said to be the Messiah for these people, right? Because Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he himself belonged to the Mahar caste, right? Mahar in the Maharashtra is said to be the Shudras, right? They are said to be the Shudras. So this is the reason he was not allowed to read, and whenever he goes to the school, he was very much discriminated, he was humiliated, and on the other hand, he was definitely termed to be the second class citizen, right? So this was the reason he raised his voice, he educated himself, he got a lot of degrees, and on the other hand, he a very famous incident in the society, that the first thing, the first revolt, the voice of revolt, he raised from, because he went to the well, you know it very well, in the villages, because of we are living in the metro cities, such kind of a discriminations are not there. Here people more believe in the class rather than in the caste, right? That if you are very pleasing looking, if you are well dressed, if you have good English, you are going to be a part of a circle. But on the other hand, if you don't have such kind of a characteristics, they will definitely denounce you for not having a class, right? So here in metro cities, we are having the construction of a class rather than on a caste. But on the other hand, in rural India, it is very much there, right? And in the rural India, we have different wells, we have different fields, and even we have different crematorium as well, right? A dead body, as I told you in the starting as well, a dead body is also treated to be the lowest, right? A man, it is also treated to be upper caste, something to be superior than the other body, just on the basis of the caste, right? So what Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar did is that he went to the well of the upper caste people, and he drank water from it, right? By asserting his voice that, right, I too belong in this society, and I too belong in this society, I too is a part of such kind of a society, I am also, I am also liable to have my rights and voices heard in this society. So there are few things that Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar did for the Dalits, and ultimately even the whole system of reservation was there for the representation of more and more Dalits in the mainstream society, right? And I was talking about the Ati Shudras from the Manu Samriti, from the the construction of the lowest of the societies, right? Lowest of the lowest in the society. And then there are a lot of other other terms that were used for the Dalits, right? I told you Panchama, Chandals, and such kind of things, or they were more or less, they were actually termed by their caste. Because in Manu Samriti, so it is also said that the names matter, the surnames matter. We are still, living in the society where we proudly say our full name, where we proudly say our surname only sometimes, right? So even in the Manusamriti, it is written that one's name also matters, right? Same with the, and the same kind of including you will have with the surname as well, right? For example, somebody who knows the four Ved, it is said to be the Chaturvedi, right? Chatur, Char, Ved. जो चारों वेदों को जानता हो, one person who knows the four Veds, Chaturvedi, Trivedi, who knows the three Veds, Divedi, who knows the two Veds, right? So such is the construction of the surnames of the Brahmins, right? They belongs, they are, you could say, they have such kind of a names because of their ancestral inklings. And even in the Manusamriti, it is written that your name specifies your identity, right? So he said that Brahmin name should be auspicious, right? So Brahmin should name their children something which is related to some auspicious thing, right? And he said that same goes with the Kshatriya should name their kids according to some courage and valor, and something which is related to the power, something which is related to the powerful, right? On the other hand, the third thing, Vaishya, that Vaishya should name themselves according something which is related to the trade and commerce. And in the end, he said that for Shudras should name themselves as something contemptible, right? They should name their kids as something which we should be despised. So this is the reason Chotu, Chutki, Kalu, Ganja, is tarike ke things, you could say that such kind of a you could say such kind of a terms are very 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 common in the, in the India, in the naming ceremony. And such names are ultimately the construction of the caste system, right? And you must have watched Lagan, and if you haven't watched, you must have heard of Lagan by the Amir Khan. So there was a character, right? He belongs to the Dalit identity, right? He belongs to the Shudra caste, he belongs to the lower caste, right? So he was given the name Kachra. So you can think about something whose name is Kachra. At the one time you get to know that he belongs to definitely to a lower caste, right? Because the elite people will never name their kids as Kachra, right? So the construction of his name as a Kachra, right? So definitely asserts his Dalit identity, and this are the such are the constructions, right? His name as a Kalu, Chotu, Chutki, right? Such petty names also signifies their petty existences as well, right? So this is all about the naming of the Dalits, right? So Dalits, Shudras, and we are talking about the untouchables, right? So first time Dalits word was given by the, definitely the Dalit movement cropping up by the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar itself, right? Dr. B.R. Ambedkar gave them these classes, these caste as a term Dalit, right? So Dalit means something which is broken or shattered, toota hua ya bikhra hua, right? So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar purposefully gave this term to make these people, make these people aware about their existence, right? That how they have been humiliated, and so that they can actually come off from it, right? So he said that instead of such derogatory terms, the for these classes, for these castes, Dalit would be the significant term. So this was the reason the term Dalit came to existence after Dr. B.R. Ambedkar termed or classified them as Dalits, right? And the scheduled tribes, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes are a kind of a constitutional terms used for these Dalits by categorizing their caste differently, right? This person, they are Dalits, but he belongs to this kind of a particular caste, he belongs to this kind of a tribe. So these are the constitutional terms used by the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and in order to form a group of them, to raise their awareness, to make them aware of their rights, to make them aware of the past servitudes, and make them aware of their existence and their efforts for the education, for their social justice, for equality and freedom of speech and expression, right? So this is the reason he gave them the term Dalit, right? Even the Dalit Panthers, the movements like Dalit Panthers are very important, right? The same we have the black feminism and Negro in emancipation acts in the America, right? The same things you can come across when you read about the history of the independence, after independence of the India, that they really fought for the term. Even there is a contrast between Gandhi and use of Harijan, right? You must have heard of the term. Shushmita, are you aware of the term Harijan?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Harijan for the Dalits, right? So as I told you, with the the gripping efforts or acts of the Indians citizens are they are preparing for the independence of India. So there are a lot of prominent figures that emerge from the India, and especially the term Gandhi. Right, Gandhi is definitely said to be the people's leader because he do not discriminate people. Right, he always talk about social justice. He always talks about equality. He always talks about freedom. Right, he also even talks about the liberation of these scheduled tribes, and even he talks about the liberation of the women as well. Right, because when you read about women, the women writing in India, the same thing you have said, that they are also treated to be the second class citizens. Right, they don't have any power, possession, authority, possession in the Indian structure, especially in the Hindu society. Right, so this is the reason they so Gandhi is basically talking about their liberation. So for as for the lower caste, right, so it is actually a kind of a derogatory term if we say that he belongs to that kind of a caste, and they're ultimately their names like Kachra and Chotu, such kind of things are actually a kind of for their humiliation. They are a kind of their insult. So Gandhi termed them as Harijan. Right, that term was famous by that time because people believe that a big leader is addressing us, addressing our issues. He's talking about our concerns. He's treating us equally like the upper caste people. Right, he's truly our leader. He's truly our messiah and God. Right, so the term Harijan was quite popular, but Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he actually rejected the term. Harijan means, Hari means God. Right, Hari means Bhagwan in Hindi, and Jan means Janta. Right, so it is like Hari's kids, God's kids. Right, so Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, he termed the lower caste people as Harijan, right, believing to be that they are also the kids of God. Right, they are also the kids of God. Right, but on
Then
the other,
then
yes, yes,
uh,
Shushmita,
does B.R. Ambedkar rejects the term Harijan?
yes, yes, this is what I'm
But
coming to the
why?
term. Because you read about, when we read about the construction of the god, right, you think about a kind of a society where the shudras or ati shudras, they are not even liable to enter the temples. Right,
Okay.
you read, if you read the writings of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he was against all kind of religions. Right, because he
Yes.
believes that no religion has given any freedom to the depressed, even to the women. Right,
So
he even
so
wrote in
he is against the idea of God. That's
right.
why he.
Yes, yes, that is why he rejected the term Harijan, because he believed that if God has created us in this way, then it is definitely the fault of God. Why he created me at lowest? I
Okay,
hope
ma'am.
you understand.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Why
ma'am.
he created a certain people to preach and worship, and why he created me to suffer. So you could see the same connotations of Renaissance as well, right? If you read about the Renaissance in the British literature, so
Yes.
Renaissance is also talking about the glory of the man, right? That we
Yes.
are not cursed as Bible says, right? So same way, the ideas
Yes.
of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar is very much Marxist and humanitarian. He believes in the humanity. He believes that human is the be all and end all, and human should be protected at any cost, and human is the capable, and human is the creator, right, if he has the empathy and compassion. And this was the reason that he himself rejected all the religions, and Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, in the end, he converted to the Buddhism. Right,
Yes,
if,
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
right, so this was the reason, this was the reason he rejected the term Harijan. He says that by posing them as the Hari ke Jan, by posing them as God's children, we are not even giving them any justice. We are also
Yes.
making them as a servants of God. Right, we are also
Yes.
giving, not giving them authority, we are also putting him down, or putting him below the God. Right, so he said that there is no point of emancipation or freedom in that term. So this is the reason Dr. B.R. Ambedkar rejected the term wholly and solely. Right, he outrightly rejected the term. He said that he, rather than this, rather than sympathizing with them with this kind of a sugary words like Harijan, better it we should dedicate them a term Dalit, right, so that they will always be aware of their existence. Right, they are aware of the broken past, they are aware of their unscattered pieces of their life, the social life, the economic life, the unscattered pieces, right, the broken pieces of their life. Right, that they are socially, economically, and even culturally they are poor, they don't have any capital, they lack the heritage. He said that it is better to be aware of the present rather than thinking of an idealistic world where they will just be a servants. Right, he said that the same condition was there. Right, so this was the reason he outrightly rejected the term. And one more thing, he rejected the term because as I told you, he doesn't believe in the idea of a god, and specifically the Hindu the god, right? Hari, Bhagwan. He doesn't believe in the term of Bhagwan, right? Because if, when you read Manusamriti, the construction of the Varna system, it is said to be the creator of the universe, right? That is the Brahma. You must be aware of the term, right? The Lord
Yes,
Brahma.
ma'am. Yes,
So
ma'am.
Brahma is said to be the creator of the world. So the four sects are made according to the construction of Brahma. So
Yes.
Brahmin, right? Brahmin
Yes.
comes from the head of the
Head of yes, ma'am.
Brahma. So it is said to be that they are educated people, they are, priestly people, they are very enlightened people. So this was the reason they were given the term of, the activities and terms of priestly duties, right? And for the Kshatriya, it is said to be they have come from the arms of the Brahma, right? Because they have come from the arms of the Brahma, so this was the reason they have the valor, they have the courage, they have the bravery, right? So this was the reason they will be the protector of the society, right? They will be the administrator, protectors, the warriors of the society, because they have inherited the strength from Brahma, right? And the third thing he is talking about the Vaishya, right? Vaishya from them is said to be the come from the thighs of the Brahma, right? So thighs are said to be the bulky part, right? Bulky part of our body, if you are talking about the surface level, right? So this was a reason they are dealing in the bulks, right? They are dealing in the wealth, they are dealing in the, you could say, trade, and they are dealing in the agriculture, right? So they are dealing in the bulky things of the society, right? Bulky wealth materials of the society, right? Skin part, you even you say that, right? You know it very well that there is much and more flesh in the thighs rather than on our body, right? So this was the reason they were more fleshly, they were, they are allowed to do the fleshly duties. This was the reason they are allowed to indulge in this material practices like the trade and commerce, right? Because trade and commerce are ultimately the material practices, right? And on the other hand, Shudras, or you could say the lower caste people, they are, they believe to be come from the foot, your feet of the Brahma, right? पाँव से निकले हैं, feet of the Brahma. So this is the reason they are, they are said to be the, you could say, the dirt of the society, because it comes from the foot of the Brahma, right? Foot of the Brahma or feet of the Brahma, right? So this was also the reason that, you could say, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, he rejected the term Harijan outrightly, because he doesn't believe in the concept of Brahma. He said that why would Brahma construct a Brahmin from the foot, and why will Brahma construct a Brahmin from the head, right? So the head to toe, the hierarchy from head to toe, where head will be the supreme and toe will be the inferior, right? Head will be the ultimate mover of the world, because it has something to do with the intellect, and foot, or you could say toe, it means the trampled people, the depressed people who are always on the foots, right? Who are always on the foot, who are always on the, who always become the servants. So this was the reason Shudras are termed to be the servants, right? They are, bonded, they are more treated to be the slaves, or they are, have the particular kind of a servitude mindset in their mind, that they have to, please the masters, they have to serve them at any cost, they should not, turn back from the duty in order to have salvation in the society, because this is what Brahma has ingrained, and this is what the call of the Brahma for them as well, right? So this is the reason Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, he outrightly rejected the term Harijan, and he said that instead of Harijan, he gave them the term Dalits, right? So the term Dalits came from the Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, right? And for their representation, he gave them the constitutional term, that is SC, that is scheduled tribes, STs, that is, sorry, scheduled caste, and STs for the scheduled tribes in the constitution, to have a better representation in the mainstream society, right? He said that from centuries there is no representation from such sects, because they are the marginalized voices, they are oppressed from centuries. So this is the reason they should have a right, and in order to maintain a society, in order to create a balance, right, we really need to give them a representation. So reservation was not meant for the upliftment, it was not meant for the upliftment of the economic condition. The very basic motive was for the representation, right? We really want to be heard first, right? It does not have to be the empowering, doesn't do anything with the upliftment. On the other hand, there are certain agendas about the political parties who try to use or manipulate the constitutional terms to their own, personal motives and interests. So this is not our concern, because we are basically talking about the literal point of view, right? But the basic terms, the construction of the reservation was given for the representation. It is not for the upliftment. There is nothing a kind of, you could say, a privilege given to them. It was basically their right, their effort for the better representation in the constitutional and democratic society, right? I hope you come across and you understand the term Dalit. Do you have any question? Should I continue? Shmita, do you have any question?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so let's continue, right? So we were talking about the term Dalit, right? The term Dalit came from the Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, right? He fought for the cause of the Dalit identity, their possession, their canon, their voices to be heard in the society, because there are atrocities, the humiliation, the kind of exploitation these classes, these castes have in the past India, in the ancient India, right? But in the democratic India, we were talking about few things, right? The conditions are still same, right? The caste system is very much there, right? People are talking about abolishing the reservation. They are not talking about the you could say they are not talking about the social justice, right? So the whole idea of the Dalit identity was based on the idea of social justice, right? Why we need Dalit voices to be heard in the mainstream society, so that more and more people are aware of their existence and the social justice, right? The social justice needs to be done, right? So this was the reason, the springing of this Dalit literature, right? For example, we will talk about Balbir Madhapuria, where he talking about the Chhangya Rukh, right? He calls himself as a tree without the leaves. He was talking about that how much humiliation, how much insults, what kind of tortures he come across as an individual, just because he belongs to a certain caste, right? And that certain caste is believes to be lower in the society, right? He is not aware of the lower and upper construction at the time of the birth, but this society made him feel that he is little, he is petty, he is lower, and he is actually having his autobiographical undertones with the certain you could say an object that is a tree, right? We'll definitely discuss this tomorrow, the autobiographical accounts, the fictional, the poetry, and how drama, right? Drama depicts the voices of the Dalit literature, the Dalit identity, right? So I hope you got enough idea about the Dalit identity, right? We have talked about the margins, the Dalit, their naming ceremonies, the contemporary India, right? And the how Dalit is an object and not an a subject, right? Even if you read the scriptures, even if you read the text, even if you read the ancient India, you feel that they were they were not there in the mainstream society. Nobody was talking about their concerns, right? Everybody was there to exert and exert power on them, right? So they were there to exert power on them, because by exerting power on the lower, they want to make themselves feel superior, right? So this was the reason Dalits were more of an object and not at all treated as a subject, right? So they were not even considered to be the individuals, right? So they're even shadows where, they want to avoid their shadows. So what else we can think or visualize about it, right? So they were simply the objects rather than the subjects, right? And then we talk about the Dalit identity, right? The position of Dalits in the mainstream society, the position, what kind of a position they have in the mainstream society, what's about their stakes, right? So Dalit literature is definitely has, put a lot of effort for the upliftment of the society, right? For the Dalits, when we talk about what kind of a literature they were actually, creating. So the very first literature, the very first things that sprung up, that were the autobiographies, right? So they were writing the autobiographies, where they were actually talking about their personal struggles, their personal encounters with the upper caste, how they are humiliated, how they are insulted, even after the whole big promises of equality, freedom in the India. Still, they were treated to be the second class citizens. They don't have any access. They don't have any empathetic voice. People are not treating them with empathy, but on the other hand, even the 200 years back, the conditions are still same, and still they are treated with the contempt. People don't want to be show any empathy to them. They really want to run away from them because they belong to a certain caste, right? So the arena of the Dalit literature sprung up when we talk about, right? So the Dalit literature, the focus of the Dalit literature, the writings, right? That for the Dalits, as the name says itself, right? So basically, Dalit literature, or the writings from the margin in the context of Dalits, are those writers or those poets or those dramatists or those novelists who are themselves belonging to these lower castes, right? So because they are belonging to the lower caste, they are having the first hand experience. So this was the reason they are actually paying much more we are actually stating the facts. They are actually, doing justice to what they are writing, right? So their ideas or their fictional, even their fictional work, they are not at all a work of fantasy. They are not at all, love stories, fairy tales, what we actually, think about in the mainstream society, right? So they are definitely not the work of fantasy and flight of imagination. Rather than their accounts are more or less stating facts, right? So their accounts are a way of articulation, right? They really want to express their emotions, they really want to express their feelings, they really want to make people aware that what kind of existence people have actually imposed on them, what they really want to, what are their dreams, how they are treated in the society, and how they want the society should treat them, right? So their accounts are definitely about the social construction, right? It is actually stating facts. And their literature, because of the Dalit literature, Dalit literature was actually talking about the social revolution, right? So the power, the wealth, the money, which is actually settled in one hands, and they keep on exploiting the lowest, whether it is Dalits, whether it is women, whether it is the wildlife or the nature. They really want for the social revolution, right? So the shifting of the powers, they really want to reconstruct, they really want to talk about the reconstruction of the society, right? They want to, think about a society, as I always mention in my lectures, right? That Marx wants a classless society, and Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, he wants a casteless society, right? His idealism was there is a society where there is a no caste, right? So definitely the dreams of casteless society was their concern for this. They really want to reconstruct the society. They said that the rigorous reconstruction is needed. These distinctions, the hierarchies, the classes that is made on the basis of caste, that they should be, molded, they should be abolished, or they should be shunned, or a new order should be there, right? They are also equally talking about the reconstruction of history as well, right? They really want to write history as well. For example, there are few Rakshas and Rakshasis, right, which are actually termed in the, you could say, Hindu law or Hindu society, right? But on the other hand, when you read about the tribal literature, you see that they were actually not the Rakshas, they were not the Rakshas, they were not the Asuras, they were not the Dayans or Chudels, but on the other hand, they were very common layman people, right? The Dravidians that are living in the forest, right? They were the tribal people, because they do not belong to the Aryan race, they do not belong to the Hindu code. So this was the reason they are demonized. They are demystified as the demons, right? So this is the reason, right? So this was the reason they were definitely talking about the reconstruction of history as well, right? The history should be written on a new front. The voices from the margin should be heard, so that the history should be reconstructed as well, so that people will be more and more become empathetic, and they call for the ideal society, right? An ideal democratic society where there will be social order, where there will be social justice, where there will be equality and freedom, right? And definitely the Dalit literature is talking about the idea of freedom. As I told you, it is not about the physical freedom, right? It is also about the kind of a freedom in the every sphere, right? They should have the social freedom, they should have the, freedom in the every sense. They should be roam around freely. But on the other hand, I would like to, there are a lot of temples where still their entry is debarred, right? There are a lot of places in the rural area where they are not, treated equally, right? They are not allowed to enter in the temples, right? They are not allowed to enter into the to take water from the wells of the temple, right? So such are the common things, right? So this was the reason they are talking about the idea of freedom, right? Even though such kind of honor killing incidents, the shaming incidents was definitely there still in the India, the very fabric of India, right? Where they are not at all treated equally. And this was the reason their literature, by the way of their writings, they are asking for a voice of freedom. They really want to have a freedom, right? They really want a free India. They really want to have a free society where they should not be debarred from such places, right? They are talking about the socio-economic freedom. They are talking about the cultural freedom, right? Where they can move freely, do something, right? Express their voices. And definitely they are talking about the social justice, right? So there will be a common social code, right? So there will not be distinctions, right? That just because he belongs to a upper caste, he will be respected, and he belongs to a lower caste, he should not be respected, right? But on the other hand, very some very common examples are still there, because the caste is something which we cannot get rid of, right? Though there are a lot of religions like Buddhism, like Sikhism, right? They tried a lot, they worked hard, the gurus, Lord, right? And even the Lord Buddha, right? He the major concern of such kind of a religions was there. And people, and if you see that people moved to this religions because they really want to come come out of the caste inequalities, right? They really want to fight the caste equalities, as it is always read in, right, manav ki jati ke pehchan wo, right? We all are same, all men, all humans are same. We are no way different in any construction by the god, right? So these caste and class are just these societal norms, societal you could say societal rules which are imposed by a few people, right, just in order to exercise power and authority over the lower, right? So their uh, writings definitely talk about the idea of freedom. They are definitely talk about the social justice, right? They really want to revel in a world. They really want to create a world in their writings. They really want to have a word. They are posing the idea of a utopian society where they feel that such kind of things are there, right? And definitely their construction, right, the construction of the Dalit literature, they were talking about the new subjectivities, their own new experiences, and new languages, the new aesthetics were still there. So this was the reason the Dalit literature was definitely a literature that talks about the resistance, the rebellion, and the revolution much later. But ultimately, at first thing, when you read about the first phase of the Dalit literature, the writers from the Dalit literature, whether it is a poet, whether it is a novelist, whether it is a dramatist, they talked about their broken identity, right? That still we are moving in a free India, a democratic India, but still they were actually treated and they are treated badly, and they are humiliated, right? Still they are exploited on the name of caste. They are talking about their subjective experiences. They are talking about their autobiographical accounts, where we're talking about the dealing with the upper caste order, the social hierarchies are still much there, and what is their role in the society, right? And the more and more they revel in the society, the question of identity crops up, right? They feel that the very important term of the literature, that is the quest for identity, the identity crisis. They said that we are suffering from the identity crisis because there is a society who actually makes you believe that you are lower, right? And you will always be the lowest in the society, right? So they really want to have an identity, and they really want to be respected. They really want to be belong to this world, right? Who actually push them to the peripheries, who actually edged them from the peripheries, right? And they really, and the world who actually believes that they don't have any stake in the society, right? So the literature is a way to understand these voices, to listen to these voices, right? A very famous work of Gayatri Chakravarti's Walk, right? You have heard about the author, right? So Gayatri Chakravarti's Walk, in a very famous essay, Can the Subaltern Speak? Right? He was talking about these subalterns. So basically, he's talking about the tribals people, right? He did his PhD, and he did his all the cultural work on the tribals, right? He was talking about the Mashweta Devi, and on the other hand, he was talking about the tribals, right? The lives of the tribals, and basically the people who are Dalit. So basically the people who are belonging to the lower caste and tribes, right? So he is talking about the Can the Subaltern Speak, right? So because of the violence that is actually there in the society, right? He was talking about the epistemological violence, that it is not about the economic violence, but because we are giving them such traumatic experiences, right? Because of these traumatic experiences, because these traumatic experiences has actually left quite a mark on their mental health, quite a mark on their memory, quite a mark in the history. So because of this epistemological violence that the mainstream society is actually casting on the people who are on the peripheries, right? Can the subaltern speak, right? There will be a hope that the subaltern will speak, they will have a say in the society, they will have a voice in the society. And how will they articulate the ideas, right? Because there is already somebody who was there on the part of speaking it, right? From your course, for example, MEG14, right? We were talking about the Samaskara. You are Ananthamurti was a Brahmin, right? He himself was Brahmin, and he was actually showcasing about the hollowness of the Brahminical system, right? About the priestly system, right? Where the concubine, right? A Dalit woman, if a if a Brahmin man's having any kind of a connection, right? Their marriage was not at all permissible in such kind of a society, right? And still, the marriages are still not permissible, right? We are talking about the a progressive India, but still, right? The intercaste marriages, especially, right? People will, I really don't want to be casteist at this point, but on the other hand, people have such kind of tendencies that they really don't want to marry in the lower caste, right? We really want to go up and upper, right? We really don't want to go low and lower, right? We don't want to go low and lower, right? So in the You Are Ananth Mursi Samaskara, we'll talk about the class construction, that how uh, a Brahmin, right? If he has any connection, right? The Brahmin says that he falls in love with the Dalit woman. So first of all, he is not to be, their relation was not at all acceptable in the society. That how an upper caste and lower caste women, can have a family, can have a home, can have a relationship. And on the other hand, then we were talking about that how she's not liable to become a wife, right? She cannot be a wife. She doesn't have the right to become a wife, and only right she have, or you could say only term they have, is for the concubine, right? So she can be the concubine of a Brahmin, right? So same way, so you will, we talk about such kind of a construction in the coming lectures when we are talking about the Dalit writers. On the other hand, we are also talking about such kind of a constructions, the imposed hierarchies, the imposed, you could say, exploitation, their insults, their humiliation, right, from the point of view of mainstream as well, right? That how mainstream society, how mainstream writers are portraying them, right? That how they are talking about them, how they are, articulating them, and how they are making their, their image in front of the world, in front of the society, right? And when we are talking about the literature, right, so they were definitely talking about the freedom of the speech, right? And the freedom of the speech. And when we're talking about Dalit literature, as I have already, we have talked enough about the Manu Samriti and the ancient India, and how Hindu society, right, Hindu law society. So the constructions were very much there, right? The construction, and the first very very important construction was definitely there was the Varn, as I told you. It has to do with something wealth, right? So money makes the mayor go, as people says, right? The people who have means in the society, only they will prosper, right? On the other hand, the people who don't have any mean in the society, they will ultimately, die and starve. So the same goes with the upper caste and lower caste, because the upper caste are, they have well paid job, they are earning good money, they are having good reputations, and they are actually, prospering. On the other hand, the lower caste, they don't have, access of the basic things, and on the other hand, the kinds of activities they are doing, they are not revered. So this was the reason they are not respected. So this was the reason they are not at all well paid, right? So let me give you a very basic example, right? The salary of an IS is, you could say the salary of an IS and difference between a salary of a daily wager, right? Somebody who is actually working as a on a daily wager, right? So on the other hand, the physical work the person or daily wager is doing is, much more excessive than somebody who is sitting in a chamber, somebody who's, we talk about our political leader, somebody who's, sitting comfortably in a AC room, and what he was doing. But on the other hand, you can see how they are being paid, right? So this is all about the, because they are not respected, right? A daily wager is not respected. This was the reason he is just able to have 500 rupees or 700 rupees, in a day. So same goes here, right? Because they are not respected in the society, their activities, right, their activities are lessly paid, right? Or they don't have the access to the wealth, right? So apart from the wealth, the very important thing that actually, that actually forms the society is the education, right? When we talk about the education, education was just simply limited to the upper caste, right? So only Brahmins or only upper caste children, they have the access to the education, right? They do, on the other hand, lower caste, they don't have the access to the education, right? They don't any have any access to the education. So this was the reason, right? So they were lagging behind, right? So they were not moving ahead, they were not educated, they were not enlightened, they were not aware about about the society. So this was the reason, so they were lagging behind. So with the advent of the literacy, right, when the right to education came, when all and all people, they have access to the education, they have access to the literacy. So this was the reason that they are able to form their voices, right? There was never a Shudra who was actually educated, then how will he write Vedas, right? There was never a Rishi who was actually a Shudra, right? There was never a Rishi, Muni, Mahapurush who was actually, who belongs to a lower caste. Then how that person can be able to, construct a granth, who is able to construct a work, who is able to voice his concerns, right? So this was the reason that education was solely limited to fewer hands, and that is to upper caste people. So their voices in the mainstream society, their ideas, their ways, their granthas, their gods even, right? So their voices were more and more heard in the society. They dictated the society, they created the society, and the whole construction of the society comes from the literacy of the upper caste people, right? Even the terms of Bhagwan, right? Bhagwan, Paramatma, this kind of terms are definitely given by the upper caste men to the god, right? It has never given to the lower caste people, right? Because they do not know that how to spell it, how to think about it, and how to create the construction, right? Because of the lack of education, right? I hope this much is clear,
Yes, ma'am.
right? Do you have any question regarding this, Sushmita?
No, ma'am.
Okay, should I continue for more?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we were talking about the education part, right? So because of the lack of education, right? So the you could say the power was limited to the few of the caste, right? For example, we have the upper caste people, right? So because this was the reason they are said to be the ultimate creator of the meaning, right? Creator of the world and creators of the meaning. If we have to, look upon it, we have to, run to them to, or in order to have meaning from it, right? And then we talking about the Dalit literature. So Dalit literature sprung up after the education, when the Dalits, when the lower caste people, they goes to the schools, they goes to the colleges, and they got themselves educated. For example, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, right? He voiced their concerns. He was talking about their issues. He was talking about their concerns. And he was also talking about the reconstruction of the society and reconstruction of the history as well, right? So it is said to be, and the 25th December is said to be the Christmas, right? But on the other hand, the same day he burned the Manu Samriti, right? And he said to be the Emancipation Day, right? He burned the Manu Samriti, and he said that it is said to be the Emancipation Day. And he said that for all the freedom that every Dalit or every woman, if he fights for it, then definitely it is because of no other religion, right? He said that no religion promises any freedom or any equality to depressed classes, any equality or any respect to the depressed, right? So whether it is going to be the lower caste people or whether it is going to be the women, right? The concerns are very much there. On the other hand, he's even shed an appropriate light on the importance of the woman as well, right? The woman in the caste system, right? He said that he even urged the women, right? He used to have mahila sanghs, right? He used to have mahila organizations, right? Women organizations. He called women from all over the India, and he was having the, he was enlightening the people, that how he said that in a one speech, that women are the ultimate, gateways to the caste system, right? He urged the women to come about from the shackles of the caste system, right? He told women, right, that you are the first one, right, who are the ultimate bearers of the caste system, right? Why? Because he said that first it is the woman, right? It is actually a woman who is married to the a man, right? So a woman is the one who is married to a man, right? If it is a Brahmin woman who is married to the Brahmin man, asserts the identity, right? A Shudra woman is married to the Shudra woman, right? And a Shudra, you could say a Kshatriya woman is married to the Kshatriya man, right? So he said that it is the woman who asserts the caste system, right? Because the basis of the marriage was definitely the caste, nothing else, right? Because you know it very well, in the last past centuries, the past ancient past, the only thing that matters during the marriage was definitely the caste. सबसे पहले, first of all, it is the caste, and then comes the class, right? First of all, they look for the same caste, and then they go for the thing that how much that person is earning, about this economic security, right? So he said that you are the first people who are the ultimate gatekeepers or bearers of the caste, because first thing, by the marriage, right? Because you marry in the same caste. So by marrying in the same caste, you are asserting the caste hierarchies. And second thing, he is saying it is a woman, right, who gives birth to a children, right? So if a Brahmin woman gives birth to a children, so he or she is going to be a Brahmin, right? So same goes with the Shudra woman, right? So he said that it is by the birth. First is by the marriage you assert the caste, and second by the birth, right? You are giving birth to the kids, and by your birth, right, you are asserting the caste. So this was the reason he urged the women to come out of the caste distinctions, right? He really wanted women to come out of the caste system and rejected the caste distinctions. He said that because it is no one less just restricting the freedom, it is no one less just talking about the emancipation. But on the other hand, the same thing, right? The very famous and controversial shlok from of Tulsidas, right? Ki dhol gawar shudra और नारी सकल ताड़ना के अधिकारी, right? Have you heard of the shlok, Shmita?
Yes, ma'am.
Right, so what is your take on that? There were a lot of controversies, right? I'll give you both the you could say debates, right? So what's your take on that, right?
Ma'am, it's definitely wrong to say, it's kind of a creating a stereotype.
Okay, very good. So, what kind of a stereotype, right? What kind of a stereotype we are talking about?
Ma'am, that whatever is wrong, it's with women,
Yeah. On the other
and
hand,
she is the one who should be punished.
yes, right. So there are, you could say, first of all, I would like to quote the liberals, right? So-called Hindu liberals, who are not admitting the atrocities, who are not admitting the mistakes, but on the other hand, justifies it with the buttery or glossary words, right? So they are saying that, but on the other hand, we are also living in such kind of a informatic world where you could say anyone can quote few things on the 20-second or 30-second reels and is said to be the educationist, right? So be aware of that. I always said that key, always read by yourself, right? But on the other hand, I was giving you the example of Hindu liberals. So there are people who are actually saying that it is not pratarna, right? So they are saying that ढोल गवार शूद्र और नारी सकल प्रताड़ना नहीं है. प्रताड़ना होता है किसी को एक्सप्लॉइट करना, किसी को डांटना, किसी को मारना, बीटन करना, right? So it is not there for the pratarna nahi hai, tarna hai, right? So you must have heard this word and very much familiar with the tarna, right? Because
Yes, ma'am.
tarna is also a very contemporary construction, right?
Yes.
Even our parents are not familiar with it, but we are familiar with the tarna word, right? So tarna
Yes, ma'am.
is definitely going to do with the staring at somebody,
Gazing.
continuously staring. Yes, Sushmita.
Ma'am, I was saying gazing.
Yes, it is gazing or staring at a person like continuously, right? And such kind of a tarna and such kind of a staring and gazing definitely makes that person uncomfortable, right? So basically, this is what is the contemporary construction, right? But first of all, if we talk about the shlok and we talk about particular two lines, right? I'm not talking about the religious significance. I'm just talking about the construction of this, right? So I'm not talking about at what construct he was written and to whom it is dedicated, right? Whatever is the writing the person, right? So Tulsidas is talking about dhol gawar shudra or nari, right? So first of all, the grouping of the words, right? So with
Yes.
right, so with shudra and nari, he is actually grouping the same words dhol and gawar,
Gavar.
right? So the construction of dhol and gawar with the shudra and nari, and on the other hand, look at the construction shudra and nari, right? So they are actually belonging to that all the women, they are the second class citizens, right? They are equal to the lower caste men and women, right? They don't have a kind of authority, or they don't have any kind of identity in the mainstream patriarchal society, right? Because they believe to be men are the ultimate, you could say men are the ultimate construct creator of the world, right? So the construction of dhol gawar with the shudra and nari, and shudra and nari on the same plane, right? So it itself says, speaks a volume, right? Rather than it needs a layman to thought about it and ponder about it and come up with some kind of interpretations. And on the other hand, there are few people who are saying that it is not pratarna, there is not at all the exploitation and beaten part was not there. It is simply talking about gazing in them, and they are giving such kind of a liberal opinions that a dhol needs to be checked, only then the drums, only then the beats will come, right? Ki dol ko thap thap karke you can check that it is actually giving you good beats or not, right? And same goes with the gawar, right? You are making people enlightened, and only then that person. Then same goes with the shudra and gawar, that you really need to gaze them, right? You really need to gaze them, you really need to stare them, you really need to put them under control, you really need to look after them. And you know it very well, you must have heard about the Foucault's idea of panopticism,
Yes.
right? So Foucault's idea of panopticism is the same thing, right? The in order to assert power, in order to oppress people, we really need to have look on them. So this is panopticism. He gave the idea of the jailers, right? The ancient jails. He was talking about the jails, right? The system of the jails, right? The supervision was there because they really want to check the activities of the criminals, right? So you really want to check them, you really want to have an eye on them, you really want to, because you feel that they, because anytime you get them out of their side, they are deemed to commit something, they are deemed to commit something impolite, right? The same way of construction of the, you could say, Lakshman Rekha, right? Lakshman Rekha in the Ramayana, right? So the Lakshman Rekha's construction was there, right? That if a woman steps out of the Lakshman Rekha at the one moment, you just steps out of the Lakshman Rekha, you just stepped out of the patriarchal wisdom, you just stepped out of my sight, right? You are deemed to be possessed by a Rakshas, right? Ravana will come and take you, right? So this was the reason. Wherever you are going, you just have to go with your father, you have to go with your brother, you have to go with your husband, right? Because they actually work as your Lakshman Rekha, right? I hope you are getting my point,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So the
Yes.
construction of that they really need to be, they put under the custody. They have to, we really need to look after them in order to get our things done, right? In order to get our things done in our way, we really need to look after them. We really need to, have an eye on them. So the whole construction of that was there, right? And we were talking about, the construction of Dalits, and we were talking about, their emancipation and the operation, the atrocities they have suffered from the ages, right? In the next lectures, we were definitely talking about the texts, right? Have you read anything from your course, Shushmita?
No, no, ma'am.
Okay, so tomorrow we will talking about the autobiographical notes and the few fictional work, right? So,
Okay,
so
ma'am.
you may have the idea that how they are voicing their concern. And very
Okay.
one more example I would like to quote here, that when we are talking about the construction of Shudra and women, that so there was a Devadasi tradition, right? It was very much
Yes, ma'am.
prominently there. So there is, so you should must have heard of it, right? So
Yes,
what's your take on that, Shushmita?
ma'am. It's another way of exploiting women.
Right. So it is ultimately, especially in exploiting the lower caste women, right? So
Yes.
Devadasi tradition was there in the, Madiga caste and the different caste in the South India, right? So there was a tradition. So there was a tradition that the first girl of a lower caste will be dedicated to the temple, right? Because
Yes.
earlier so these people, right? So they were the performers and dancers, right? They have this certain, backfooting against the story, that they believe that the first, because they belong to the, earlier they belonged to the drummers, they were drummers, they were singers, they were performers, they were artisans, right? So they believe that the first girl, right, the first girl of the society, sorry, of the family, right, it should be dedicated to the temple, right, and she will be married to a god, right, and she will be the wife of a god, right. She is not liable, and she doesn't have a right to marry a man, because she will be the wife of the god, right. So this way, and she will be available to the, and then came the Devadasi ceremony, right, the first ceremony. So ultimately she comes from the three phases. So first is definitely the Devadasi, or you could say the girl who is actually, dedicated to the temple, where she will clean the temple, she will decorate the god, sing or dance for the god. But on the
Yes.
other hand, then came the other phase, when she hits the puberty, right, when she hits the puberty, she's liable to be become a woman. Now she is no longer a girl, right, she is going to have a voluptuous body, she's going to have a appeal, right. So this was a reason. So for the first time, right, she will be offered to a village priest, right, temple priest, or any other of the, village landlord, any man, any upper caste man who really wants to have him, right. So the first intercourse she is going to have, that will be decided by the temple, that will be decided by the upper caste men, right. So the second phase that she entered, that is the Jogini, right. So this is, I'm talking about the Dalit woman, right. So Dalit women are also, they are also talking about Dalit feminism nowadays, where Dalit women are talking about their oppression, right. So the second phase that she entered into, that was of the Jogini, right, where she became the prostitute, right, the
Yes.
temple, under the guise of this worship, they are actually running the temple prostitution, right. She becomes a prostitute who will be available to the every man of the village, right. Yes, Sushmita, do you have any question?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so he second phase was of the Jogini, right? So she entered into the, the village prostitution, where she will be available for the all of the men of the, of the village. So basically the upper caste men, right? So the upper caste men, she will she will be there to the satisfy to the desires of the upper caste men, to the lust of upper caste men, right? In this way, so instead of becoming the wife of a god, right, so they believe that, because they believe that we are the, we come from the god, we are the upper caste people, so you become a concubine or prostitutes in such a such way, right. And when she becomes old, then she will become an Irupala is a kind of a soothsayer, right. So for example, she will perform, you could say, the redemption of the village, right. She will have a bucket on her head, and go round and round in the village and redeem for the village, ask for the goodwill of the village, ask for the goodwill of their upper caste people, their well-being in the festivals. There will be festival performs where she will be dancing, where she will be praying to God, doing hard jobs, redeeming themselves. So this is not a less, right? So under the guise of tradition, under the guise of religion, they are exploiting the Dalit woman. So this was the reason that when we talking about the Dalits, and specifically when we talking about the Dalit women, so they are thrisely oppressed, right? So Dalit, this was the reason Dalit feminism sprung differently from the Dalit literature, because Dalit women feel that the concerns of the Dalit men are totally different from us. They said that they are thrisely oppressed. First, Dalit women are oppressed or subjected to atrocities by the upper caste men, right? By the upper caste men whenever they are working in the field. For example, apart from Devadasi, even they are working from the field, anybody can come and grab them. They are assaulted, beaten, and even sexually assaulted them, and they have their ways in any way. So they are saying that by the upper caste men we are oppressed, and second, we are also oppressed by the lower caste men as well, because when they come home they are subjected to the domestic violence, right? Their earnings will be forcefully taken by their men. They have their liquor, they have their they have their own things in the gambling, right, from the earnings of their women, right? So they are saying that not even the sexual assaults, we are physical assaults, the mental assaults or torments we suffer from the society, from the outside, from the upper caste men, even from the lower caste men, even from our own families, even from our own society, we are assaulted in the same way, right? So the cases of domestic violence, rape is very common in their society, even their families as well, right? And the third thing we are saying, we are thrisely oppressed from the upper caste women as well. He said that we are completely different from the mainstream women, the women, the feminism, right? The umbrella term of feminism. They said that we do not, feel at ease with them. We do not connect with them because their concerns are not at all our concerns, right? For example, the feminism, right, the mainstream feminism, they are asking for the equal reservation for the parliamentary seats, but on the other hand, here the Dalit women, they are actually fighting for the small rations, right? They are actually fighting for the similar wage rate, right? A wage rate that a man is getting. They are demanding their right that even we could have the access to the equal wage rate. So this is the reason Dalit feminism sprung up differently, because they feel that we do not feel connected to the Dalit men's concern, and not to the mainstream feminist concerns, because they are not talking about our concerns. So this was the reason he said that. On the other hand, apart from the concerns, they said that upper caste women, even upper caste women, don't have a sympathetic inkling to us. They said that either we are despised, they are always treated as the other, right? The mainstream women, the mainstream feminist, they are not feeling sympathy or compassionate towards them, right? They never included them in their movement, in their organizations, and even with their even with the daily lives activities as well, they were despised. For example, Devadasis, and for examples the other constructions, that's right. So they are completely despised by this feminist, right, the mainstream feminist. So this was the reason the Dalit feminism sprung up differently. It came as a whole different approach, right? So to study about the Dalit woman identity, right? That how Dalit's woman identity is totally different from what Dalit literature men is talking about, right? So Dalit women's, you could say even the blacks concerns, right? Blacks concerns were more of class, right? They were talking about equal wage rate, but on the other hand, the construction of the Dalit woman and her identity is much more deeper, right? So this was the reason when you read about Dalit women and we read about the Dalit women's writing, you feel that they feel that we are thrisely oppressed, right? So their construction, the different movement was definitely needed by them, right? So this was all about the construction of the Dalit literature. Do you have any question? Should I take up or explain 10 minutes more? You have
No,
any question regarding this,
no, no, ma'am.
Devadasi?
I don't have. No, ma'am. No,
Okay.
ma'am. I understand the concept.
Okay, okay. Then we are talking about the Devadasi, and on the other hand, there are a lot of constructions, as I have told you, your best text, right? The Devadasi tradition, they are not even going to have the, you could say, have this equal say, right? They have the equal say, they have the equal wage rate, right? Dalit women were actually fighting. And when we read about the tribal literature, even we, we read about that how they are demonized, right? So on the other hand, very basic concept of, man and woman is there, right? So woman is the ultimate seductress, woman is the ultimate home wrecker, right? All the, things, all the wars, big wars are fought by the words of the woman, right? So same was you will see in the tribal literature that how they are demonized. They are said to be the rakshasis, they are said to be the chudels, they are said to be the Dians, right? So the whole construction of the mainstream literature, and they demystify women, they encoded women to be the demons, the witches, right? So that was very much popular in the American literature as well, when it comes to the black woman and when it comes to the, witchcraft of Saline trials, right? So the connotations are there, and even when you read about the Dalit literature, we can have the same connotation of Afro-American literature, right? So Afro-American literature, blacks are also talking about the same concerns, right? Blacks are also voicing their concerns for the equality, justice, and freedom. So the same concerns you will feel in the Dalit literature, their voices, they are talking about the same concerns, right? They are talking about, they are, they want their voices to be heard, so that there should be a social justice, there would be freedom of speech for them. People will get to know about their, tormenting experiences, the kind of harrowing and experiences they have, right? On the other hand, there are certain practices, right? The generational memories that passes on to the people, and that is, and how the constructions, the caste constructions are deepening day by day, right? So this is all about the constraints of the Dalit literature, right? That we are going to soon study, right? So for example, tomorrow we are going to start with the autobiographical account by Balbir Madhupuriya Changyaruk, right? So he was talking about his own identity, his own autobiographical accounts, incidents, right? What actually, forced him to write a narrative, and in his narrative, what kind of a concerns he is talking about, right? He is talking about his own struggles in the mainstream society, right? Because he belongs to a lower caste, right? He is not liable to get the equal resources, he is not liable to get the equal respect, he is not liable to get equal acceptance from the society, right? So whenever we are talking about the Dalit literature, the very first concern was the identity, right? They definitely suffer from an identity crisis, because the mainstream society feel that they don't have a identity, right? As I told you, their journey from Ati Shudras to Dalit, and now when we are talking about the scheduled tribes and scheduled caste, right, we are giving them reservation for their representation. The Constitution of India is trying, hard, working hard from, past 75 years since we are independent, for their upliftment. But since you can see that there are still, no, not very positive hope, right? On the other hand, the very common phenomena is that, as I have told you, that SC, the constitutional term, has also make a, and they have also made a mockery of the constitutional term, and how a constitutional term that promises to give their rightful place has actually become a derogatory term for them, right? So it is actually becoming a slur, right? It has actually become a kind of a slang for them, right? To address them, right? To address them, to humiliate them, to insult them, to assert their identity, that how he or she belongs to a particular caste, how she or and that particular caste is lower and lowest, right? So there are few things that the literature definitely talks about, and they are talking about the social revolution, right? So as I have already mentioned that how Marxist, right? Hello Marxist, and Marx was talking about a classless society, right? He was talking about that there will be a society where there will be no classes, right? There will be no class conflict between rich and poor, between bourgeois and proletarians. The same way he actually, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he idolizes a society, right? He idolizes a casteless society, right? Where there will be no caste, right? Where there will be people who are not being respected on just on the name of caste, and where there'll not be an order that just because you belong to a lower caste, just belong to a particular caste, you will be despised, right? You will be avoid, you will be humiliated, you will be insulted. And the same way feminist, when we talk about the feminist criticism, right? The feminist, right? They were talking about the genderless society, right? They really want to create a society where there are no genders, right? So there will be no genders, no constructions of man and woman, but on the other hand there were just constructions of humans, right? So this was the basis of the Dalit literature, the humanitarian approach, right? They really want to be termed as humans first, right? They said that don't term us as such men, such caste, such people, such habits, such professions. But on the other hand, the whole construction of varna and caste, right? They believe that the construction of varna and caste should be abolished, right? So if a person is able to read, is able to read, write, and teach, then he can be treated as someone, right? But on the other hand, if a person from the lower caste, even if he educates, even educates himself or herself, he becomes a teacher, he becomes a priest, even he is not liable to even become a pandit. But even if he becomes a pandit in a different sense, right? But he is just going to be treated as a person from the lower caste, right? So people, so this is was the construction of the Dalit literature, that they are actually voicing their concern for the freedom, right? For the freedom, for the social justice, for the equality are their basic concerns, right? And in the Dalit literature, they were talking about their own experiences, right? They are talking about the mainstream society and the different society that is imposed on them by birth, right? And they cannot do anything to eradicate their identity, right? Without even putting any effort by them, right? Without even they put any effort, an identity is already imposed on them, right? Just by birth, right? If you have just, if you have just have a birth in the a particular caste, you will be that kind of a person, right? So they really don't want to eradicate, right? They can't eradicate that identity, and no matter hard they try in this mainstream society, they cannot get rid of that kind of identity, right? But on the other hand, that literature they were actually talking about, then comes the advancement phase, the second phase of the Dalit literature, we are actually asserting their identity, right? They are no longer feel ashamed of their identity, they are asserting their identity. And on the other hand, they are becoming the voice of the voiceless. They are actually putting effort for a lot of people who are not at all under the domain of the mainstream society, right? The mainstream society who simply disregarded them. So on the other hand, there come the second phase, who are actually asserting the Dalit identity. They were talking freely that such kind of social reforms are needed in the society, and we really need to abolish few evil practices, right? For example, untouchability, right? So a bleak past, a picture of bleak past of our ancient India, right? Where untouchability was performed, right? So it was definitely by the efforts of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, right, that the certain law was passed, right, that how untouchability is a crime, and we get rid of that kind of a sources, that kind of you could say evil practices. But still, caste was definitely there. Caste was the ultimate fabric of our social, economic, and even political life. You could say that even a Dalit people, right, they want a Dalit leader, a people, upper class people, they want an upper caste people. On the other hand, the layers are going on and on, right? Then we have general category. On the other hand, if you look at the construction of the present day democratic country, so in constitution we don't have any kind of a construction of caste, right? So they will just have the categories, right? The constitution promises the category, right? For example, general category, and then you could have that because of the personal and political gains, you have OBCs, then you have EWS, and a lot of constructions, right? So such kind of a constructions are just deepening the class in caste, right? Rather than upliftment of the people, rather than putting people in one social fabric, rather than singing the mayams of equality and freedom, we are actually deepening the gaps, right? And we are actually making more and more distinctions, making more and more hierarchies. And this was the reason that the gap between upper caste Brahmin and the lower caste Shudra is still there. And this gap cannot be, you could say, cannot be eradicated. That this gap cannot be shunned, cannot be erased in one day wonder and one day miracle. And only such can be, it can be erased or eradicated by the understanding, right? By the understanding, by the compassion that only literature can offer, right? No political theory, no economic settlement, and you could say no social contract theory, as the Hobbes Locke's group professors in the social contract theory. So it is not about social, political, and economic construction. So Dalit literature took the help of the voices of articulation, right? The articulation, the voices of expression, right? So this is the reason they said that ki Dalit literature is the ultimate, it is a bridge, it is a way so that their voices can be heard and such gaps can be reduced and there will be a caste-less society, what we are actually talking about, right, in the coming lectures, right? Do you have any questions, Sushmita?
No, ma'am, I understand everything.
Okay, and tomorrow we are going to start with the Changyaruk, right? So Changyaruk, let me give you a brief overview of Balbir Madhupuri, right? So he belongs to definitely to a lower caste. We are talking about his construction, his biography, and other elements, right? Definitely, we'll talk in the coming lectures. What have you read in the? Have you completed the course? The first course, it has been completed.
Literary criticism and theory, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, okay. So in the next lecture, we will be talking definitely about the same construction, the Dalit identity, right? The Dalit identity, definitely when the Dalit literature sprung up, it definitely talk about the men, right? Because education and upliftment of the woman is still a far-fetched dream for a Dalit woman, right? So it was the Dalit men who really wants themselves to be educated. They really want to have a say in the mainstream society. They really want to have more and more power in the mainstream society. They really want to create their own part. They really want their voices to be heard in the mainstream society, right? So when we talk about the Dalits, right, when we talk about the Dalit literature, so there will be more and more poets, dramatists, and the authors, right, those who are men, right? Basically the Dalit Panther movement consists of the three very big names, that is the Raja Dhale, then Namdev Desal. You must have heard of Ramdev Desal and Urmil Pawar, right? So these are the people who were actually the formation of the Dalit Panther. Whenever we read about Dalit literature, you must read Dalit Panther, right? What is the Dalit Panther? The critics and writers of the Dalit Panther, right? So they are the Dalit Panther. These three writers are the Dalit Panther, right? So they were talking about the Dalit identity, right? They were the one who started writing about the concerns of raising awareness in the people in the mainstream and equally in the lower caste, right? So make them aware of the issues and concerns, right? So we were talking about the Dalit Panther, and on the other hand, definitely Sharan Kumar Nilambale, right? So he's also one of a great writer, Sharan Kumar Nilambale, and towards an aesthetic of Dalit, right? A great visionary book he offered, right, towards the aesthetic of Dalit, where he mentioned that and he demystifies the construction of Satyam Shivam Sundaram, right? That how it is the upper caste women, right? Upper caste men and women, right? They have the obsession and they have made the construction, they have used the ideological construction of purity and pollution, right? So ultimately, this construction of purity and pollution is the very basis of Dalit identity and Dalit canonical works, right? So they will be talking about that how they will be termed to be the impure. On the other hand, the people who they are said to be the generator of the pollution, but on the other hand, there are people who are said to be the pious, pure, just on the basis of caste, right? So with quotation, right, I would like to end my lecture there. They say that ki jati kabhi nahi jati, right? So they said that ki once you become a person by a particular caste, it will never goes away, right? So एक जाति ही होती है, right? ये जाति ही है, caste ही है, that never never goes away. तो वो जाति कभी नहीं जाती है. So we really want to deconstruct the idea of caste, and we will talk about the new subjectivities, new experiences, and new aesthetics in the coming Dalit text, right? I hope this much is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Shushmita. So we will be meeting the same day tomorrow. If you want to have any other text rather than this, you can let me know. Right? I'll teach you that tomorrow. Or
Okay.
you want to go by my plan of the idea. You want to have another text from your syllabus, you let me know. I'll teach that. We'll talk about that if you have time to read it.
I don't have original text, ma'am. I'm actually finding any PDF. If you have any PDF, then it will be very helpful if you can provide it to me.
Okay, okay. I'll ask the team, right, to send you study material, whatever I have with me, right. But I'll definitely recommend you to study Can the Subaltern Speak by Gayatri Chakrabarti Spivak. And if you really want to have a know about the construction of Dalit, then you must have read Towards an Aesthetic of Dalit by Sharan Kumar Nirambale, right. So these two texts are quite a visionary text when it comes to Dalit identity, right. So tomorrow we are going to discuss the literary text. We are going to approach the text, and we are going to talk about their brief summary, and then we are talking about the constructions, right? So tomorrow we'll meet at the same time, 6. Till then, keep reading and exploring literature.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I hope this is for all, sir.
हाँ जी मैम, हो गया ना मैम,
हाँ जी सर।
खत्म हो गया।
जी
ठीक है मैम, थैंक यू।
ओके, थैंक यू सर।